In this video, we're going to cover post-install activities. So our system has been installed on the network operator on the switch. In this case, we're running PicOS 3.5, and I'm getting ready to log in. So by default, our default username is admin, and our password is Pika8. And it asks me to change it, so I'm going to go ahead and change it. And I do have some complexity requirements. So what I did was I tried to put in Pika8, Pika8, and it says, that's really not sufficient. So let me put in my new password again. It's going to be Pika8, P-A, exclamation point. Pika8, P-A, exclamation point. And that was sufficient. So now we're logged in, and we have our brand new system. First thing we're going to need to do, and I'm on a console port, so let's go ahead and set up access for it on the network. And so let's look at our management interface. We should have that one in. So show system, and I can hit tab to autocomplete. We're going to go management Ethernet, and then I can hit enter again, and it will give me an option. Or I can type ETH0. Oh, I can't actually on this version. So it's just show system management Ethernet. And it does show me that I have received a IP address. Now I know that this one is assigned via DHCP. That will work just fine. So at least now I know what my password is. And then I can, in this case, let me go ahead and open up a new screen. Oh, not that one. There we go. A new session, and that might not be to your liking. So let's go ahead and let's change our colors and go to black. Be a little easier on the eyes. All right. Okay, so here we are. Now we can SSH. Again, our default password is, our default username is admin, so we're going to SSH admin at, let me look back what that my IP address, so it's that. And I'm going to give it my password, Pika8, P-A, exclamation point. And now I'm logged in. Now you'll see that we're running a trial version. Let me explain the trial version a little bit. So you can download our software, install it on any open networking switch that we support, and we'll give you the first 4 ports to use to evaluate the software. If you want, and it's not just the first 4 ports, it's also one uplink port on a switch, and it varies based on the switch model. There's more information out at pika8.com. You can look at our support site and documentation. It'll show you exactly which ports are enabled on which model in evaluation mode. All right, we'll go back to licensing in just a little bit. So initially what we did was we looked at our management interface, we found out our IP address, and then we used SSH from our Linux system, or in this case, I'm on a Mac, so I'm running Unix underneath, and I'm just in a shell, and I was able to get out there. Now, let me show you something else that's kind of neat. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of my SSH session. Now, I have set up my system to have an SSH key that I went ahead and generated. So let me show you how I did that. I did SSH keygen -t RSA, and I generated a key. I'm not going to run it again because I don't want to generate a new key. After I've generated that key initially, then I can do an SSH copy ID admin at, and that same IP address, 10.1.20.155. I just need to enter in my password one time. And now I can just SSH to it without entering my password. All right, so there we go. I'm logged into the switch. And let's see, what are some things that we would want to do initially? So let's, if we wanted to assign a static IP address to the switch, we could do that. I wouldn't recommend doing it from an SSH session. I'd recommend doing it from your actual login, on a console. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do set system. Oh, I see couldn't run a set command because I'm in the operational mode. I'm just in view only. I can hit a question mark and look at all the commands. The one that I want to do, if you're familiar with Cisco, you would do conf t. Well, in our case, we just do configure. Now we're put into the mode or privilege mode where we can run set commands. So I'm going to go ahead and set system, and I can use the tab key to autocomplete. We'll do that management Ethernet again, ETH0 IP-address, and now we're going to give it, we're going to tell it what type of IP address, so it's an IPv4 as opposed to IPv6, and we'll give it a 10.1.20. Let's call it 35/24. That's my IP address. I'm also going to set a gateway address. Let me do that. Set system management Ethernet. Looks very similar, except here we're going to do IP gateway, IPv4. You see, I could do IPv6, 10.1.20.1. That's my default gateway. Now that I've run two commands, if I show my configuration, it shows me that I only have two commands in, and both of them have this little caret. That means that the command is not yet committed. So I'm going to type commit, and now I've committed both of those commands at exactly the same time. And you can see there's no caret there anymore. All right, now I could also do a show command to actually show the system management Ethernet ETH0, and it shows me in a slightly different format exactly what's configured underneath management Ethernet 0. So one thing about PicOS is you'll notice is that we are not like Cisco. Cisco's command line interface is different. We have similar commands, but if you're familiar with the Cisco CLI, this will look a little different to you. We're most similar to Junos. In fact, in the architecture, we so if I do a show, this shows me my entire running config. Again, I don't have much right now, so it's all in a JSON format. Right. So you can see that I have system and then management address, and then I have two items underneath here, an IP address and a IP gateway. As we add more commands, you'll see it differently. That's why when I do the show command, I can pipe it into display set so I can see exactly the commands that I ran initially for the system. All right, now the other kind of cool thing here is that I can do this and then I can pipe it. If you're not familiar with the pipe command, in Unix, what that will do is it takes the show output and pipes it into another command. And so I've piped the show output and told it to display it as set commands. And now I can pipe it again and have it match. Right, you'll see that my options are match, compare, count, display. Match is probably one of the more useful ones. And then I can match it on ETH0. Now that's going to give me exactly the same output. But as we add more commands, you can see how this could be very useful. If you have a very large configuration, you might say match on OSPF. Match on a particular IP address. All right, next, let's see here. So I've shown the display set. I've shown match. I don't have anything else in there. We'll keep using the display command, the show display set match, as we continue on. All right, so I've done my commit. Let's go ahead and add in one more command. Let's set my system host name. And we're going to give it a name, because right now my name is the default, XOR plus. Let's call it lab switch AS4610. Now you notice nothing changed. So if you remember our command, we can do show, just up arrow, and do a show display set. And we'll see that one command has not been committed. So the way I would commit it is type commit. But say I decide I really don't want that command to be added, right? I don't want to commit it. Well, I can exit out of this session, but it won't let me because it knows that there are changes that need to be committed or discarded. So I can do exit discard, and now it's gone. Go back into my command, look back at my display, you can see that it's not there. So let's go ahead and run that command again and commit it this time. And now you'll see that my prompt is going to change. All right, there you go. And there's my new configuration. So let's talk about licensing. So you know that we're in evaluation mode. Now, we have two modes that this switch operates in. Right now, we're in configuration mode. If I exit out, it actually exits me all the way out because this is a go-to CLI version of code. I'm going to go ahead and log back in. Admin, PicOS, PA, exclamation point. Now I'm logged back in. And I'm still in the CLI. So how do I get to the Linux? The Linux environment is important because in order to do licensing, you need to be in the Linux environment. So let's do this. We're going to start shell sh. That puts me into the Linux environment. You can see that my prompt changed. You can see we have 3 different prompts. Up here, the pound sign means that I can do set commands and make changes to the switch. This one here means that I am only in view mode. And this one here, it means that I'm in the Linux. So in Linux, if you're familiar with Linux, you can do an ls. I can do a pwd. I'm in home admin. I could do an ls on slash. You can see it looks very similar to a Linux operating system. I can do any Linux commands that I want. So ls-la slash bin, for example. Here's all the bin commands. Normally we just do an ls and be able to show everything we have there. So licenses. I can do a license-s. This shows me that no license is installed. But there's my hardware ID. So I would cut and paste this information and email it into my SE or to license@picos.com and request a license. And if you purchased one or you have an eval that's being provided, you're doing a POC, send this information in. The good people in the support team will generate a license for you, and then you can install it on this system. I don't have one today, but what it would be is a text file that you would copy out here. You can either create a file, because I could do a VI license dot, or I guess it would be test.lic. I can type I, and then I could paste in any information that I wanted to in this file. And if you're familiar with, you hit escape, :WQ, and that writes the file. Right? That's standard Linux using the VI editor. I'm going to go ahead and remove test.lic because it's not valid, and now you'll see there's nothing in that directory anymore. All right, so to install a license, I would have to do sudo license-i. That's install. Now, if I do -h, it shows me what the different options are. But I do need to use, I'm fairly certain I need to use the sudo command. If in doubt, you can use sudo. It makes you root and allows you to execute any commands you want. To show it, you don't have to be root, but I do believe to install the license, you do have to do that. All right, so there you go. That's how to install a license. And all right, here's another one that's kind of useful. So now I'm in Linux. Let me exit out. I'm back into my switch config. As you know, I got the caret here, so that means I am in view-only mode. Let's go into config mode again. Now, one thing I'm going to show you, this is one I think is very useful. So let's look at, okay, so we'll do show display set. You can see I have 3 commands in. I have an IP address and I have a name. Let's go ahead and save this config off in case we want to come back to it. So we're going to call this initial config. All right, I just saved off a snapshot of my system. If I want to go ahead and go back into the shell, the Linux shell, I can show you where this initial config is saved. Now, what you'd think we might do is do start shell sh. It's saying that's not valid, and it's because we're in command mode, or in set mode, rather than here. I can do start shell sh from here, and it will take me to the Linux. And I'll show you in a minute how to do that start shell sh from config mode as well. All right, but we're in the Linux. Let's do an ls. Hey, look at that. There's my file. I just created it. Let's do a more on initial config. You'll see that it's in the JSON format. This is only 5%. This is showing me everything that is in the config, all the defaults, everything. So say I want to look at the defaults, because that's actually very useful. So I'm in the show command phase. Let's go into config, and I'm going to do a show all pipe display set. This shows me all the default commands. Now, as you know, I don't have this many. I did not type all these in. This is a lot more information. If I do it without the all command, I'm only going to see the commands that I added. But if sometimes for security purposes or an audit purpose, you want to know exactly what all the defaults are in a given system. So this is a way to look at all the default commands. All right. So there we are. So I told you I was going to show you how to get to Linux from within the set. In order to do any commands that you can only run in the view-only mode or the non-privileged mode, you have to put the run command in front. If you've grown up with Cisco, then you know that Cisco used to have a way where you could do that using the do command. So think of run like the do command. So I can run start shell sh, and it puts me into the Linux. All right, so showed you all that. Lots of fun. We know how to commit. We know how to exit discard. Am I going back here? Okay, I'm back in my set thing. All right, so there's another way to run Linux commands. You can run a command call. If I exit here, I can do bash and then put in quotes like PS. It shows me what processes are running. Or I could do bash ls, and it lists out. I could also do bash ls-l. Again, that's a way to run a Linux command from within the CLI. All right, well, let's exit out. Let's do a start shell sh again. Let me show you how to run CLI commands from Linux. This might be useful. You could actually use SSH and execute commands remotely through the Linux and have it affect your switch. So we have this command called CLI-C. And then in quotes, I go into configure mode. I put a semicolon, and I can set anything I want. I can set a VLANs command, VLAN ID. Now I got to know exactly what the command is. There's no command completion. Commit 100 and then commit. So you can see we have to know exactly what we want to do in order for this to happen. It goes in, it logs in, makes the change, and then comes right back to the Linux prompt. So I'm back in my settings here. I'm going to go into config mode. I'm going to do a show display set. And there you go. There's the VLAN that I just added. All right. One last thing that is kind of useful to know when we start up here. Let's do, we're going to do a run start shell sh, go back to the Linux. I'm going to show you how to get back to your initial switch config. Now, there's two ways of doing this. One, remember we made that little setting where we saved off a config? So I can do a load, and if I do a merge, I can do merge or override. Now, override is going to completely replace what I have. There's the file that I saved. If I just keep hitting tab, it shows me all the different files I've saved off. So I have this load override initial config. So if I want to get rid of this VLANs command, I just do that. Now, I'm not quite done. And if we do a show display set, you will see that the change is it's going to remove this. So as soon as I type commit, now it's gone. All right, because I reloaded a config that I had before. All right, the other way, and this way would get rid of everything. We're going to go in here to the Linux. So run start shell sh. I'm going to cd over to pica config. You'll see there's some config files here. Not a whole lot's been done. We save off a new config file every time a change is made. So this is one way of going back to a previous config. We could more pica.conf. Again, it's going to show us everything because this configuration has all the defaults in it. So not the easiest thing to look through. Now the way to get rid of your config is I can do a sudo rm pica star. All right, my configs are now gone. Now in order for this to actually take effect, I would have to reboot the system. And from Linux, it would be sudo reboot. That's how I would reboot from here. I'm going to go ahead and exit out, and I'll show you how to exit out of Linux, that is. So I'm back here in my set commands. If I do a show display set, my config's still here because I haven't rebooted. So if I want to reboot, I would do run request system reboot. That's how we do it from within the CLI. The other way I could do it is I can exit out here and do a request system reboot. I don't have to put the run in front of it if I'm not in privilege mode. I'm not going to do that because we're having a lot of fun with this. Let's see. So that is that. We've talked about the different ways to reboot the system. Let's talk about NTP. So let's go back into our configuration mode. And we're going to do set system NTP server IP, and we put an IP address of our NTP server. I honestly don't know if I have one in my system. It might be here on my router. We're going to go ahead and commit that. And let's see, we can set our system time zone. Lots of different options. We're going to do America. Oh boy. So I got all my America options now. And let's see if Chicago shows up, and it does. Okay, so I've just now got that. I'm going to go ahead and commit those. And if I want to look and see what I did, let's do my display set. I do have it showing up there. So I've gone ahead and set a few NTP servers, and let me show you how to delete them. That's an important thing to know. So use delete as opposed to set, and then you come in here and say system all the way out, and it deletes that particular one. In some cases, you can delete all the NTP servers. In this case, you can't. You have to actually specify. Now I've deleted them, and I hit commit, and they're all gone. The other thing that is commonly done is to go ahead and set a system DNS server in case you would like to have DNS resolution on your endpoint, on your switch, sorry. 10.1. All right, and that's it for our initial setup on the switch and your familiarity with the command line, and that's including the PicOS CLI as well as the Linux operating system.